Hello, today we are reading Native American Food, From Salmon to Succotash. Native Americans hunted and raised animals for food. Depending on where they lived, one tribe's diet could be different from another's. Today, as we read, I'd like you to think about what foods are the same as what we eat today and what might be different. Which of these foods might you like to try someday? Early peoples of North America. When European settlers began arriving in North America in the 1500s, they found that Native Americans already lived on the land. There may have been as many as 240 native groups, sometimes called nations or tribes. Neighboring peoples shared similar ways of life, including what they ate and how they cooked. The foods Native Americans ate depended on the plants and animals found in the area where they lived. Most Native Americans hunted, fished, and gathered wild plants. Others learned to farm. This is an image of North America, and Minnesota is right here. It's a blend of Northeast and the Great Plains. In Minnesota, the tribes such as the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and Dakota Indians lived here, and they still do today. This says, ancient Native American nations are often grouped based on where they lived and the cultural features they shared with their neighbors. So thinking about what we read, it makes sense that neighboring tribes would have similar cultural traditions and food because the same animals lived there and the same kinds of plants grew. Hunters on the move. Many Native American groups hunted animals or game such as deer and elk. Those living in the Great Plains area, such as the Sioux, were known for hunting large animals with humped backs called bison. They're also called buffalo. Bison were found throughout the plains, feeding on grasses that grew there. So if we go back to the last page, the plains are in the middle of the United States. Flat regions like North and South Dakota, Colorado, Nebraska, parts of Minnesota, that's where the bison lived. Some plains people were nomadic. This means that they moved often, following a food source, rather than living in villages. Tracking and hunting bison became much easier after the Spanish settlers brought horses to North America. Bison were often hunted with bows and arrows. Sometimes, however, Native Americans would use teamwork to trick a herd into running off a cliff and falling into a pit. Did you know? Native Americans often used many parts of an animal as possible. Bison, for example, provided meat as well as bones for tools, hair for rope, and skins for clothing, blankets, and shelter. They really believed in using the whole animal and often thanked the animal for all of the gifts that it gave us. Trapping small game. So remember, the word game is not used to describe like Minecraft or tic-tac-toe, but game refers to animals that people hunt for food. Native Americans throughout North America hunted small game such as rabbits, squirrels, and ducks. Nations of the Great Basin, such as the Shoshone, Paiute, Ute, and Washone, those are different Native American tribes, ate lizards, rodents, and snakes. That might sound weird or different than what we eat today, but remember that this is what was available where these Native American tribes were living. In the southeast, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole ate otters, raccoons, and turkeys, among other animals. So Native Americans, they ate what animals were around them. Small game was hunted with nets, clubs, spears, and bows and arrows. Some people used traps. A snare is a type of trap that uses rope, wire, or string to catch an animal. Did you know? Native Americans hunted ducks using decoys or fake birds that they made from plants. This picture shows the Seminole tribe of Florida hunted alligators and turtles for food. Here we can see an alligator pelt. Pretty interesting. Fishing for food. Many Native Americans settled near bodies of water. Streams, rivers, lakes, and oceans provided much of their food. Some native groups, such as the Tlingit of the northwest coast, got most of their meat from fish, crustaceans, shellfish, seals, sea otters, and even whales. One of the most common ways for Native Americans to catch fish was by jabbing them with a spear. However, they also used nets, traps, and hooks made from animal bone. This says, did you know? The Makah of today's Washington state used long spears called harpoons to hunt whales. Sometimes it took days to kill a whale. Then its mouth was sewn shut to keep it from sinking. Finally, it was pulled ashore. The Makah still hunt whales. Today, many Native Americans continue to fish. A Yakima man catches salmon with a net on the Tlingit River in Washington state. Great gatherers. Hunting and fishing provided Native Americans with many kinds of meat. However, most groups gathered wild foods too. Native American gatherers collected nuts, seeds, roots, mushrooms, fruits, vegetables, and other types of plants. They were skilled at knowing which plants could be eaten and which were poisonous. Some of the plants were made into drinks and medicines. For example, the Santee Sioux and Ho-Chunk people of the plains used garlic and onions to treat wounds. I have a connection. I use garlic and onions in my daily life, but not in medicine. I use it to cook food with. Did you know? Native Americans also gathered honey, eggs, maple syrup, and salt. I'm noticing that a lot of the foods that they gathered are still foods that we eat today. This picture shows the Pomo of California were hunter-gatherers. This Pomo woman is shown collecting seeds in 1924, almost 100 years ago. All right, this page is about acorn flower. I'm going to go ahead to the next page. Learning how to farm. Nearly 9,000 years ago, Native Americans living in present-day Mexico figured out how to grow corn. This useful skill slowly spread across North America. The ability to grow crops meant Native Americans no longer had to be nomadic. They still hunted, but they also built settlements near their fields instead of chasing herds. Native Americans of the Great Plains were hunters, gatherers, and farmers. They grew sunflowers, squash, beans, and corn. These are the ancestors of the Ikura, Mandan, Hitsada, Crow, and Pawnee tribes. Did you know? Native Americans in hot, dry places such as the Southwest were able to farm too. They created irrigation systems to move water from rivers and streams to fields. So I'd like you to continue thinking about how people have used food, how they grew food, found food, and ate food or prepared it over the last 9,000 years and even more. You can continue reading on EPIC. This is in your mailbox.